Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Coach's Corner. Maria Birova here, Clean Health Master Coach and WBFF Pro. Today we have a new guest joining us, Jason Tencate, who owns a co-owner of Elite Health Club in Australia, is going to be joining us. And for those of you who are OG followers, may be familiar with who Jason is. We're going to wait a few moments for him to join us. But today's conversation is going to be entirely about transformations. And what better time of year to be talking about transformations than the new year? It is a time where people are diving into pursuing their health and fitness goals, but more importantly, if you are starting the new year with a coach, you will see a lot of that going around on social media, like 12-week transformation challenges and things like that. Jason, who is known to be a transformation specialist, will be perfect to have this conversation with, to talk to you about what goes into transformations, how you can set up your own, or if you're a coach, how to master that 12-week transformation period. What's up?
Hey,
Hello,
how
Jason.
you doing?
Thank you for joining us. I was kind of trying to hold the room down a little bit.
I know, sorry, I've just been back to back with clients all morning, so.
And this is why we are super grateful to have you and snag you from your clients to have this conversation. Jason,
Okay.
dive into it. For all of our viewers, they may not be familiar with you or are one of our OG followers. Can you introduce to us history with Clean Health, as well as what you're currently doing today as a coach?
Yeah, of course. So obviously my history with Clean Health is I had a gym in the Gold Coast here in Australia. So I had that for about 4 years. When I set up that gym, I wanted to look into getting into extended education. And I obviously came across Clean Health education when I was looking into that. So that was when essentially I started off my educational kind of journey, was initially through Clean Health. And then I pretty much went through the whole entire curriculum that Dane provided. So I went through all their nutrition courses, all their training courses, and then I went all the way through to doing private one-on-one business mentorship with Dane, which is where we obviously really got to build our relationship. Once we went through that process, realized I wasn't really aligned with where the direction of my original business was going. So Dane and I obviously looked at, what other options were out there for me as a coach and where I wanted to go. And he really helped mentor me and guide me through that process. He called me a week later after we had that chat and said, look, I've got a position here available for you. Is it something that you'd be interested in taking on? Literally, I then packed up my life in the Gold Coast, sold my business, moved to Sydney within a month. And then pretty much started working for Clean Health. So I originally came over to Clean Health to run their personal training department. So they had their gym facility and education facility over here in Chatswood. So essentially I managed all the trainers, worked on building the business alongside with Dane. And then obviously over time, that trajectory went into, leading some of the education courses, being across that, some product development stuff. I was there for 4 years. Obviously, as we know, when COVID hit, we kind of closed down the in-person business, had a big, obviously, shift in terms of the direction of the business, went all online into education. I then turned around to Dane and sort of said, look, I really want to keep pursuing my, coaching career and really go down the in-person training path. I'm a very practical, technical kind of person, so I love the hands-on kind of work that I do with clients and so forth. It's a big part of what I love doing and what I'm passionate about in the industry. So then I decided to venture out and start my own business. So even through that, Dane was a big support network for me in terms of starting up my own business. I literally opened up my facility here, probably like 300 meters down from the old Clean Health. So now I've got 8 trainers that work through my business. I've got 4 that work directly through Elite, and I've got some contractors. And then, so obviously this year we're looking at getting back into education with Clean Health as well, as because that's something that I'm also really highly passionate about, is educating young trainers, and really trying to help guide them into, the direction that they can go and the influence they can have in the industry. So that's essentially in a nutshell. Obviously at Elite, we do a lot of Gen Pop transformations. Like, that's a huge part of our business. I've also got an online business, which I do as well. So I sort of run both businesses separately. The online stuff is predominantly around comp prep. So I do a lot of comp prep competitors for WBFF, as you know. And in Sydney, I'd like to sort of regard ourselves as one of the leading kind of comp prep facilities in Sydney, so we've got a lot of young girls here that are all sort of training hard for the WFF shows this year, which is really exciting. So we had a really successful last year in that. So
I had the pleasure to train with you and visit the facility myself,
you
Sydney,
did. Yeah.
which was epic. And if anybody isn't familiar, Jason is literally the living clean health, ideal coach from the ground up, taking our education to really being a success in the industry and taking that forth on and on and on, from online to face. And like you said it yourself, you are known for your transformations from Gen Pop to prep clients. So with our conversation, no one better about it than you. So I want to hear, how do you define transformation? What's a success?
Yeah. So how do we define transformation? So I think one of the bigger things that I've sort of found with a lot of coaches is like, what's the degree of potential that you can extract from a client in terms of results in regards to that transformation? I believe that as a coach, your clients will come to you with a certain idea on what they can achieve. So, a client will come in and say, I want to lose 5 kilos. That's because they don't really understand the potential or the capabilities of what they actually can achieve. So my sort of belief system is, as a coach, it's your job to elevate the expectation of the client, right? Because at the end of the day, if your client comes to you wanting to lose 5 kilos, but realistically they should probably most likely lose 10, then it's your job as a coach to really make that client believe that that's possible and guide them through that journey. That's going to make the client really see the value that you provide them as a coach. So that's kind of, from that aspect, what I sort of look at it. In terms of a good transformation, I think, when you look at, most transformation periods are like sort of 12 weeks. That's generally a sort of standardized time frame that we generally kind of aim for within the industry.
Yeah.
I think that 12-week mark is a good benchmark to kind of establish, a really good visual result in that time. It allows your client to obviously really understand the fundamentals that you're trying to ingrain as a coach, set the expectations of results. And I think over 12 weeks, you can really make a big shift in someone's physical outlook, but also their, mental health, obviously their, everything from their conditioning, their mindset around nutrition. Like, you really drive into a client's success on all avenues in that 12-week period, because a large part of what we do is education as well, right? So, essentially in 12 weeks, I generally would expect that a client would go from, coming in feeling, unhappy with how they look, unhappy with how they feel, not feeling the best, not training the best. And by the end of that 12-week period, being able to come out with some really good, skills in how to train.
Yeah.
Good skills in how to track their food and have really good knowledge around that. And then obviously from the end of that, really look back at the 12-week period and go, wow, I've really made some amazing progress in that time that they're proud of, and they want to continue on that journey.
I also think it's important for coaches, on the other side of what you said, is to be realistic with the time frame needed to reach certain goals. Sometimes we have very ambitious goals. Yes, you can, push the potential if a client comes with 5 kilograms, but they need more. But we also need to remind those clients who are coming with bigger goals that they might require longer time frames, and that 12 weeks is realistic for the initial push, but it might take a longer duration for that. So how do you go about telling a client that 12-week might not be enough for exactly the goal that you're setting with me?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, if we look at this directly from the coaching front too, you've always got to have in the back of your mind that, coaching clients is your business. So you don't want to tie clients just in for that 12-week period and have them think that that's all they need to get the results. You've really got to kind of paint out that journey and really get them to buy into the process, that it's a lifelong commitment.
Yeah.
And if they want to have a really good, consistent, sustainable lifestyle, in terms of health results and so forth, they're going to have to really understand that it's going to be a part of their lifelong term. So, I think as a coach, it's really up to you as a coach to direct your client and guide your client and motivate your client to understand the importance of, it's not just a 12-week hit and then you're done.
Yeah.
It's a really journey-based process. I think, one thing that I think the industry doesn't really do very well is collect a lot of data. I think that the coaches that generally seem to get the best results are the ones that are very data orientated. And I think at the end of the day, as a coach, if you can really get your systems focused around what metrics do we need to assess, what are our standards, what are our minimums, what are our maximums, then everything becomes from a more calculated approach as opposed to a guess, right? So like if I have a client wanting to lose 20 kilos, we know that that's highly unachievable for them to lose that in 12 weeks. You know, there may be some outliers that could do that, sure, but most of the time it's not really a feasible result for a client. So we know that if a client comes in and says, hey, I want to lose 20 kilos in 12 weeks, then we know, okay, well, a normal, standard, safe, kind of consistent weight loss that we can achieve is about 0.5% to 1% per week of body weight. So we know that, like, if they're 100 kilos, they're going to lose about, you know, 0.5 kilo to a kilo a week, essentially. Yeah.
And so real quick though, when you come to be talking about calculating and measuring these variables, does it ever differ for you when it comes to Gen Pop and your athletes? Are some more receptive to that than others? Because even from my own experience, I run into issue where some of my clients are very like they push the data away and they're like, nah, I'm just going to focus on executing and don't want to focus too much on the numbers. Then I have my athletes that are like down to the gram with macros, weighing in every single day, and that doesn't trigger them. How do you go about navigating those clients that are maybe not as aggressive?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it's a hard one because I think, you know, obviously as a coach, you've got to get your clients to comply with your methods and strategies. Yeah. It's like every coach has their own skill set in terms of, you know, the value and the coaching level that they can provide their clients. And they know that within that skill set, that's what's going to allow that coach to produce the best result with the client. If you let the client dictate to you how the program is run, you're straying away from your system, which you know is then going to be more complicated for you to execute and get that result. Yeah. So I do believe that there's an element of, you know, when we look at Gen Pop clients, their values are very different to that of an athlete.
Yeah.
So it's like, is this person do they really want to track 100% of the time to the nth degree? Yeah. Do they want to make sure that they're doing cardio like 5 days a week? Do they want to make sure that they're hitting their steps target? Do they want to make sure that they're, you know, coming to the gym, like really putting in 100% effort every session? Like those variables are going to change between an athlete and a Gen Pop client. But I think at the end of the day, it's your duty and job as a coach to get your clients the results that they want. And the biggest thing that you can influence your client with is education. If your clients understand the value of, okay, this is where you want to go, and here's the skills and the, I guess, procedures that you need to get the results. If you don't want to do what I say, it's going to take you twice as long. Then you let the client answer which direction they want to go. It's like, if you follow X, Y, Z to the nth degree, you'll do this, get this result in 12 weeks. If you want to have a bit more leniency, then it's going to take you 20 weeks. You know, are you willing to commit to that 20-week period? If they say no, then they've got to come to your side of the scale in terms of being more compliant and following your systems. If they're like, hey, I don't really care what time frame I do it in, then, you know, you can push that client out, make the programs a little bit easier for them, or make the process a little bit more simplified and so forth, and have a bit more leniency. And then that client can enjoy their lifestyle and do what they want to do, but still get the results, but just over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
So my thing with that is more, you know, the biggest thing that we need to do in this industry is build a really good, strong, open, honest relationship with our clients. And it has to be that level of mutual respect, because if you don't have that kind of connection with your client, it's hard to get your clients to really see and obviously get on board with the process that you want them to do. You know what I mean? And that's one of the biggest things with coaching is nutrition training. That's the easy part. Tapping into someone's psychology and mentality and keeping them consistent and motivated towards their goals is the biggest challenge that we ever face.
Yeah. Art of coaching that honestly comes through years of experience with coaching different types of clients. And then one of the things you touched on, and I think it's very overlooked, it's just that clarity with communication and putting your authority as a coach when you're onboarding that client. Obviously, as coaches, we might have different approaches for each client that we work with. Obviously, no better plan for things for our clients, but it is also important to stick to your moral ethics as a coach and what you're willing to compromise. So if a client is telling you how to coach them, then you're going to start running into issues, compromising your own knowledge and your own authority as a coach.
Yeah, exactly. And this is, I think, as a coach, you need to remember, it's like your clients are coming to you for the advice and knowledge and support that they can't do on their own.
Yeah.
So it never makes sense to me that a client will come in and dictate the direction that they want to go and what they're willing to do and not to do. Like, we all know if a client doesn't track their calories and macros, it's like, okay, cool. Like, what's your chances of fluking a result? It's like, maybe, but you're leaving it to chance, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what's going to happen at the end of that process is once you set that outline for a client, you timeline their goal and say, look, we're committed to a 20-week process. If they don't achieve that result, ultimately that client's going to hold you accountable to that.
Exactly.
So it's almost in your best interest to make sure that you are driving, I guess, your ideals around what's required and expectations to that client. Because if you keep reinforcing that, the client may meet you 70% of the way, but if you keep reinforcing and you keep saying, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, this is my expectation, these are the targets I want to hit, you need to make sure you're doing this X, Y, Z, you know, tracking your macros, you need to make sure that you're doing your steps, make sure you're doing your cardio, make sure that you're showing up for your sessions and completing those sessions when you're not training with a coach, then you know that that client is going to have a better chance of obtaining that result, even if they have times throughout that week that they're straying away from the normal, you know, outline of what the program requires.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that kind of goes into the next question that I wanted to hear from you is, what would you say are your fundamentals for a transformation period? What are the bare minimum expectations you have for your clients in order to help them successfully reach those transformations?
Yeah, so I think if we look at Gen Pop clients as a whole, I think if you set them the bare minimum, I think then they're going to probably not hit the bare minimum unless they're super highly motivated and committed to the result, which as a coach, you should really make sure that your client has buy-in and is on board with the process. And, but we know that that's not always the way. Where I think if you set your clients up to a level where it's like, okay, you know, training a minimum 3 times a week, like, you know, you get clients coming in saying they don't want to train twice a week. I'm very upfront with my clients. I'm like, look, training twice a week is going to get you certain results, sure.
Yeah.
But training 3 times a week is something that's going to then accelerate and, you know, obviously increase that result over time, training 4 times again. So I think the more times that your clients see you is going to be far better. My general minimums for a transformation would be 3 times a week of weight training. I think when you're a new client coming into the gym or working with a new coach, you know, you've got to remember too, if these clients have been training for 2 years, and I get this a lot of the time with my athletes, I have athletes that are like, oh yeah, I've been training consistently for 3 years, and they think that they're pretty well advanced in terms of their training. I give them a very basic level of volume and intensity, and most of the time they don't meet my expectations on good quality training, good quality execution, good quality work ethic and intending towards their training. So I think that, you know, when you get your general population clients coming on board, it's like doing 3 times a week with a coach is really going to have a lot of intervention with them in their first few phases. And then with the idea that you're going to educate that client that once they optimize doing 3 times a week and start seeing results, then the next level of progression for you could be to upregulate those session rates to 4 times a week and then transfer them into 5 times a week once you go through those first couple of phases. Steps, as we know, I think for me, we used to have this old method where we used to periodize steps more frequently. So every kind of phase that you would get a client on board, you know, start with 10,000 and you go with 12,000 and you go with 14,000 steps. And I think for a general pop client, that's quite hard for them to commit that time frame into getting like 14,000 steps per se. So my thing is what's your biggest buck value bang for buck intervention? It's like getting your clients consistently hitting targets. So I generally start with 8 to 10,000 steps, 8,000 is the minimum. Once I see them kind of keep that consistency, then I can then go and progress upon that and work them up to 10,000 and maybe sometimes push them up to 12,000 steps. My then other focus for good transformations, if we're talking solely fat loss, is I like to get my general population clients focusing on cardio. Because obviously that's going to be more time for them focusing on just burning calories, you know, working on their cardiovascular system. It's good for their health. It's good for their, you know, down-regulating their stress response and so forth over time. It's like the fitter our clients are, the healthier they are, the better results they're going to get over time anyway. So, you know, if my clients come to me 3 times a week as a minimum in the gym, they're doing that 8 to 10,000 steps. And then I program sort of 2 days, 3 days a week of cardio. That's kind of my general kind of, I guess, approach with a client as a baseline, and then I just progress on that. So whether it's like more sessions in weights or more time in cardio, it's like we just need to make sure that every phase that we have our clients, you know, if it's a 4-week phase, we just need to make sure that the next phase has a progression upon that, you know.
And then what about the, like, have clients that are very on top of their game with counting macronutrient, then you have the clients that are more you know, they're hesitant to pull out the fitness pal. And how do you navigate
Yeah.
that maybe doesn't want to track as much or doesn't do so as accurately as we coaches?
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge with nutrition is, we know, compliance. That's always going to be the biggest thing, right? So it's, as a coach, you've got to think about, you know, what method is going to get this client the most compliant. Now, giving a client macros and just saying hit your targets is, for some people, a very, I guess, successful method for them to achieve the results. Sure. But if they don't have the education or knowledge, which is where I think a lot of people lack, it's like their ability to track accurately and consistently is obviously going to be a hell of a lot less. So the compliance is going to be less, which then, you know, the results are going to be less. So I think you've really got to identify, you know, okay, with the client that I've been given, it's like, what does this client need right now to make this process super easy and convenient for them?
Yeah.
And then where do I want to get my client long term? It's like, do you want to have your client on a meal plan from the start, which may be very good for them initially because it takes away the guesswork, takes away the effort of them having to log into MyFitnessPal and have the confusion of whether they're tracking correctly or not and whatever else. It's like, here's a meal plan, follow this 4 times a day. You know, you break up those meals into the macros that you want them to hit, and then you just tell them, you know, eat 150 grams of chicken, here's your carbs, here's your veggies, and so forth. And then you just, you know, obviously have a diverse plan over 4 meals. If that's an easy thing for them to follow, then is that a long-term sustainable option for them long-term? No, we know it's not. So it's like, okay, well, what do I need to do in that first phase that's going to get this client set up for long-term success? It's like phase 1, let's give them a meal plan to follow if that's what they need. And then let's educate them through that time frame on how to start to track. But it's not a requirement, but it just teaches them the skills they need to learn to get long-term sustainable results, with the end goal in mind of getting that client having the ability to be able to track accurately and have the, I guess, confidence to do so. You know as well as I do, giving the general population clients the ability to go out on a weekend with their friends and somewhat track relatively accurately to what they do and still get good results, but still enjoy their lifestyle with their friends and not have to go, I've got to bring my meal with me, or I can't eat out because I can't track it. It's like, that's going to give your clients, I guess, a lot of value in terms of the coaching that you provide, which is then going to make the client stick to the plan a hell of a lot easier and get better results, but also convert that client into a long-term client as well, because the process seems easier for them.
Exactly. And I think that temporary discipline going to a lot more freedom. And I think that's one of the things, transformation that's not physical for my clients, is when you're well-versed and educated on tracking, it is a temporary tool. When you have a specific goal, that's why coaches promote it. Some people find peace of mind tracking all the time. But if you're that type of person that wants to do that and you have a specific goal, know that if you know how to do that accurately, guess what? Intuitive eating becomes a lot more educated and mindful, because if you don't know how to track, you're already doing whatever you're doing intuitively. You are where you are because of your intuition and how your normal habits. So I do think that one of the most underrated things, and I wish this was taught in schools, is just to
100%.
learn how to track nutrition, just so you can know the nutritional value of food, so that you're not developing these disorders in nutrition. And I do coach a good amount of younger like girls.
For sure,
and even then, in school, they get so bombarded with basic BS nutrition. And I think every client that I encounter, I teach how to track nutrition for any type of. It's just so empowering to know what you're putting in your body, so you're not following the BS that's in the industry. Especially now with the new year around, you're going to see a lot of diets popping left and right promising you results, but at the end of the day, it's the deficit or it's the surplus, it's whatever going to get you to get those goals. So
and you just got to think about, like, what's normal. It's like following diets all the time is not normal, but eating regular meals daily, 7 days a week, and just like having variety in your foods, eating out a couple times a week, like that's normal eating, in my opinion, right? So you've got to think about with your client, it's like, okay, well, how committed is this client to their process? Like, I have some of my general population clients that they track everything to the highest degree, even sometimes more accurate than a lot of my competitors. And then I get Gen Pop clients that it's like they like get stressed out when they open MyFitnessPal because they don't know how to do it. So I think as a coach, it's like, you don't want to have, especially with nutrition, one method and just try and push all your clients into that method. You need to have an abundant amount of resources and strategies that you can provide your clients. So you got to think about, well, what can I control with this client, and how can I as a coach gain control of what they do to ensure that I know my client is on the right trajectory to our results. So it could be like they follow a meal plan Monday to Friday, and then on the weekend they have flexibility, and then you assess that result. How'd you go from this week to this week? Oh, you made progress, you dropped a kilo. Well, what we did worked. It gave you the flexibility, but also gave you the structure that you needed.
Yeah.
Let's replicate that. And then we don't need to change that approach until we stop getting results or the process isn't working anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And I think as a coach, the biggest value that you can implement into your business is resources.
Yes.
It's like, if you want to save yourself time and you want to maximize your business and the amount of clients that you can help, the more resources you have, whether it's like an ebook or it's some short videos in terms of all this stuff, and you provide your clients with the resources to have access to that, then it's up to them to really take initiative to get into the education and learn the knowledge they need to get good results. It's something that as a coach, you should be preaching to your clients about education, because I think the more educated your clients are, the better results they're going to get without having to have your influence. You can focus on the other things that matter, right?
Yeah, and education is empowering. When you know why you're doing something, you're more likely to continue to stick to doing it. And you actually touched on something that we've talked about in one of our master classes before. And if you are running into an issue where you're answering the same question for your clients over and over again, add that to the list of what you need to have. Like you said, video asset, ebook on it, because think about it this way. If you provide all those assets, and if they take the time to look at them and read them, you might save yourself a lot of time to have to re-explain and re-educate, but also start off with the proper foundation of, here are the basics on nutrition, on training, this. And when you have that as a packet, guess what? You increase your value as a coach as well. Because you're not only giving them to the coach, to your client, but you're also giving them all of these tools that they're like, wait a second, I didn't expect all of this, right? So I think that's one of the biggest things for our coaches watching. If you don't have this already, whether it's on Google Docs or you have an app, you're emailing them, whatever your system is, dedicate some great assets. And you're going to do yourself such a favor to save time, because I caught myself doing that at the beginning. I was repeating myself to clients. I'm like, I could just put this in a video and have everybody watch it when they're getting onboarded.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is, looking at the industry as a whole and being in the industry for as long as you have, what do you think are the most common mistakes coaches doing when it comes to helping clients get those transformations? What are some things that you think people should be avoiding? And then we'll go into some questions from our viewers who are
All right, some mistakes that coaches make in terms of transformations. Good question. I think the best thing a coach can focus on, which is where a lot of coaches kind of lose, I guess, their way on, is your role as a coach is to educate and mentor and guide your client. I think sometimes we get stuck out thinking we've got to have, all of this education, we've got to have all of these systems, like, the best programs and X, Y, Z. But, and I used to be heavily focused on that for a long time. And one of the biggest things that I'm sort of really realizing is that good coaching comes with how well you coach and mentor your client and keep them motivated and accountable to the results that they set.
Yeah.
I think that, coaching for me is more about mindset and keeping your client accountable to, their standards and their values and their goals than it is about giving them nutrition and training. That regardless of whether they've got the best training program for the individual and it's going to get them the best results, it's like, if they're not focused and come into their training sessions with a good mindset, good intention of work ethic, where they're going to come in and really put effort in, it's like that program is only going to get the results towards the effort that the client's going to put in. If you can really tap into your client's mindset and get your client motivated and focused like weekly and daily and really keep them accountable to the targets that they set, then that your client is going to be somewhat self-motivated to keep making better decisions and keep putting, the effort in where it's required to get the results they want. To me, that is going to be the best intervention as a coach in terms of getting good results. Yeah. Then I think from that, mistakes are, I think coaches think that they have to have the most advanced systems to get the best results. I can tell you right now that when I get my most advanced clients, and if we look at my complex clients, as I said before, I give them, some of them, the most basic program on the lowest level of volume, and most of them struggle within their first phase of what my expectation is in terms of what hard work is and so forth. So I think sometimes keeping things simple and just saying, well, what are we trying to achieve in this phase one of a program? It's like, let's get our clients moving better. Let's get our clients, stronger. Let's get our clients really nailing the fundamental basic exercises that we want them to master that's relevant to that client. And then let's progress on that over 12 weeks. It's like you might keep the same exercises for 12 weeks, 20 weeks, and get your client strong through higher reps all the way through to lower reps on the same thing. Yes, it may seem boring, but guess what? It works. And it's easier for the client to master one thing than it is to master 10 different things. I think from a nutritional aspect, I think coaches should invest more time into developing their resources and assets, as we just discussed. I think for me with my business, it's like that's my number one focus right now is what can I put together to make my client's coaching experience more valuable without me having to spend more time coaching the client on these topics, where I could spend more time working on that mindset aspect with coaches, right? It's like if you can take away a lot of the heavy workload by implementing these, guidebooks or whatever it is, it's like it gives your client more value. It gives them direct access to the information that they need to get good results, and it allows you to spend your time focusing on communicating with the client and keeping them motivated. Because in my experience, the biggest thing with coaching is communication is key, and how well you communicate with your client back and forth, and making sure that they're, you're responding to these things, which is something I've struggled with for a long time. Is like being more responsive to clients on that front. It's like that is going to be the game changer in keeping your clients compliant to what they get, and that's going to dictate whether they get a good result or not.
I agree. I think communication has so much power, and it really building that trust with your client is going to be really important as well. We have this question about she says that she's confused. We could possibly ruin a client's progress because they estimate their eating, but if we don't give them that option, it might discourage them. Jason, how do you fit flexibility while still increasing clients? What are you?
So it comes back to, that's a really good question too, because you are right. Like if you say to your client, follow a program, a meal plan from Monday to Friday, go out and eat what you want on the weekend. Yeah, okay, you open the floodgates for them to, consume whatever calories and, make something completely untrackable and not get results. My point to that answer that I said in terms of giving them the flexibility in the weekends is you still want to give your clients guidance, right? If you let your clients off to have their own devices, they're going to go resort back to what they know, which is why they got out of shape in the first place. So when I say that you give them flexibility on a weekend, you still have to give them structure. They just don't have to follow the meal plan, or they don't have to sit there and track every meal. So it might be like, hey, you know what? You're going to go out on a weekend and I want you to follow, the meal plan for 3 out of the 4 meals on a weekend, and 2 meals of the weekend, I want you to eat something that you would normally eat. And then you might use this as a bit of a test for your client as well, and go, well, what did you eat on the weekend? They might go, oh, you know what? I just got steak and vegetables and went out to a restaurant and just got that, or fish and potatoes or whatever. And you go, okay, that's cool. You assess their progress the following week and they actually make good progress. You know that that client's gone out, had a meal that they wanted to have, they've made a good decision, and they've got results. If your client goes out and went, oh, well, I ate, pizza, then I went and had, a sundae, then I went and had chocolate, then I went and had this, you're like, okay, so this client still has a tendency to go and binge or eat completely off track. So then your intervention as a coach is like, well, what do I need to do this week to make that experience for that client better, and how can I provide them more value? It's like, okay, well, now we're going to repeat the same thing this week, but instead of you going out and doing all of this, I want you to pick one main meal and one dessert option, and I want you to follow that and see how you go. Then let's say the following week that client gets a good result. That client then realizes, okay, what I was doing on the weekend of going out and having that one meal and going ham on that and getting as many calories as I could in that one meal, that is what's detrimental to my results moving forward. If I go out and have one main meal and maybe have a dessert option or whatever it is, I can still get good results provided I make a good choice and keep it limited. That client is going to understand, okay, that's what it takes for me to get a result. So now they're going to make better decisions moving forward, where you don't have to re-educate that client on that process. And it also goes back to being very clear with your clients. If they are they love being social, they love going out, then it may be important for you to tell your client and be real with the time frame of reaching the goals. Goes back to how much work we're willing to. We have to be realistic. Okay, if you're going to be X amount flexible, then we have to also be flexible with
how long it's going to take to reach your goals. And I think when it comes to mastering transformations, it's not the same for every client, but hopefully with our conversation today, you were able to, everyone who was watching was able to pick up some gems on the basics of transformations. Now, when it comes to mastering this, education is key. Clean Health, as you see, Jason and myself, we're diving into Clean Health courses and lots of other education to continue our education. So not only can you continue education with us online, but Jason and I will be attending all of the live events in the new year. So if you're interested in learning from us hands-on and in person, make sure you go and head to check out our live event lineup, see where in the world we're going to be. Other than that, thank you, Jason, for joining us today. I know there's so much.
Thank you for having me.
Transformations. For anybody watching, if you have questions that weren't answered, you can ask them when we post the live replay. And then, of course, we will be bringing Jason back for more conversations. So if there are specific topics you want to cover, make sure you comment and DM us to do so. Jason, always a pleasure getting to chat with you, and I can't wait to chat with you again soon.
You too. Thanks, Maria. Appreciate that. Thanks, guys.